Dear students, this video is in continuation with the lecture that was delivered by Dr. Yogesh Pratap Singh on affirmative action. And I was present in the last lecture that he delivered, and he concluded his talk with the discussion of Champakam Durai Rajan case. And he discussed that case at great length and also brought out the main issues which are involved in the question of affirmative action under Article 15(4) or reservation, as it is popularly known. Now I want to take forward the discussion from the point where Dr. Yogesh left, and carry forward the discussion with the help of cases which came one after another, and which really complicated a very simple matter which should have been settled by true reading of Article 14 itself. If you go look at the equality clause of the American Constitution, all it contains is Article 14. Similar words, similar phrases and expressions are there, and there is no real need for say Article 15 or 16. A similar provision is not needed, was not needed in US through judicial interpretation over the period of time. Concept of affirmative action and reservation for blacks and for people of color was adopted. And in our country also, I think Article 14 was sufficient, and there was no need for us to have 15 and 16. But it was the overwhelming concern of the Constituent Assembly that these classes, scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, socially and educationally backward classes, who have been historically excluded from the fruits of power, who have been excluded, who have been deprived of the opportunity to study, to educate themselves, to develop themselves, and then to lay a claim over the seat of power. Therefore, our constitution makers incorporated Article 15 and Article 16. And I also pointed out in the last discussion that originally Article 15 did not contain this clause 4, which talks about a special provision for scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, and socially and educationally backward classes. Although Article 16 did contain a similar provision. The reason which Dr. Ambedkar, while rejecting this provision in the original constitution, clause 4, when it was presented by another member of the Constituent Assembly, Dr. Ambedkar rejected it on the ground that Article 15 is going to deal with the issues of participation in educational system. And when it came to education, his idea was of a universal common education system. So he believed that each and every child must be incorporated by the formal education system, where children of different castes, different religions, different ethnicities, different languages, they come together, and then they develop friendships with each other, relationships with each other, so that the idea of fraternity can be evolved. So he did not want a special provision only for scheduled castes or scheduled tribes originally, because his idea was that independent India will go for universal common education system, and there will be naturally space for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes as well, because even the question of proportional representation will not arise if all the children are given common education system. Then the equality of opportunity will be there in letter and spirit. However, independent India under the leadership of Prime Minister Nehru did not really go for universal common education system. And when states tried to come up with certain provisions whereby the representation of scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, and other backward classes could be made, the high courts and the Supreme Court started creating roadblocks. So the need for a special provision for representation of scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, and other backward classes itself was created by the judiciary, and I believe that a very myopic policy, education policy, whereby a universal common education system was not adopted. If universal common education system was adopted from day one, and with the spirit of Article 14 and 15, then we may not have needed a special provision under Article 15.4. However, as things stand, as the history unfolded, we know that Supreme Court struck down the provision for representation of socially and educationally backward classes. A very unfortunate decision, which led to the incorporation of Article 15.4 by way of First Amendment. And under this amendment, there was a provision that nothing in clause 1, 2, 3, 4, or nothing under clause 29.2, which was supposed to provide equal opportunity to religious and linguistic minorities, which was invoked by the Supreme Court in the state of Madras versus STEM, Pakam Durai Rajan. Nothing in that article will stop the state from making special provision for scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, and other backward classes. However, the roadblock to equal opportunity, impediments to equal opportunity, did not end with the incorporation of Article 15.4. And now another kind of a situation, another different kind of a problem was created by the judiciary, which was about the identification of socially and educationally backward classes. If you look at 15.4, it says special provision, nothing in this article or in clause 2 of Article 29 shall prevent the state from making any special provision for the advancement of any socially and educationally backward classes of citizens or for the scheduled castes and the scheduled tribes. When it comes to scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, their identification was pretty much settled by the constitution itself, because under Article 341 and 342, it is the President who himself comes up with a notification identifying scheduled castes and scheduled tribes on the basis of basically on the basis of caste occupations. Different caste, formerly untouchable castes, have been grouped together and they have been categorized and they are notified by the President himself. So the question of identification of scheduled castes and scheduled tribes could not be raised because it was very well identified by the President himself. But when it came to special provision for socially and educationally backward classes, an issue was made of their identification. Number one, how do you identify who is socially and educationally backward, and therefore special provision can be made for that class. And then how what should be the quantum of a special provision in case the state goes for reservation for socially and educationally backward classes. What should be the quantum of reservation? So these two issues were framed by the Supreme Court and different high courts, of course, and they became a battleground for next decades to come. And I don't think this really was an issue. I mean, identification of socially and educationally backward classes could be done very easily under Article 340, which talks of appointment of a commission to investigate the condition of socially and educationally backward classes. A commission was appointed initially. Kaka Kalelkar Commission was appointed, and subsequently the Mandal Commission was appointed. And with the appointment of this commission, identification could very easily be made. Now, the basis of identification, how do you identify that who in the society or which class of person in the society is to be given a place in this category of socially and educationally backward classes? I think if the Supreme Court was really looking honestly for the answer to this question, they could have found very easily in the writings of Dr. Ambedkar, because he who was one of the most erudite scholars on the social condition of Indian society, about the question of caste and class. His writings were there. He had left volumes and volumes after him, which could be referred by the Supreme Court to really determine this question of socially and educationally backward classes. In fact, on this very question, why he did not use the word caste, or rather he used word class, it was his understanding of the caste, the peculiar nature of the caste, that he avoided caste and used class. And his justification was that in our country, there are so many castes. The castes are so enormous. The numbers are so huge that you can't really pick up 2, 3, 4 castes and say that these are backward castes. So you will have to actually put similar caste groups which are who have got similar social, educational, and economic condition into one category and place them together and then identify them as socially and educationally backward classes. On the question of caste also, he was very clear that caste in our society is an enclosed class. So what is class in Indian conditions? It is not to be determined by the economic status alone, because in our country, in the subcontinent itself, as was studied by Dr. Ambedkar, is that you have the caste which is enclosed, it becomes a class. So when you have a normal or general understanding of class, people can move from one class to another class. But this peculiar concept of caste does not allow mobility, does not allow people to move from the caste of their birth. They carry the stigma even if the economic condition improves to a certain extent. It is basically a concept of graded inequality. So if when the question was raised, who is to be placed in this category of socially and educationally backward class for the purpose of Article 15.4 and also for the purpose of Article 16.4. So the discussion that we are going to have under 15.4 and the cases that we are going to discuss under 15.4, they are all relevant for the purpose of 16.4 as well. No, so it was a very it wasn't a very difficult question to be decided, but Supreme Court remained engaged with this question for decades together and really made a mess of it. And it is here where the in these judgments that the true nature and character of the Supreme Court comes out. Let us first take up the major case of major milestone in the history of affirmative action, social justice, and reservation after the incorporation of Article 15.4. Here I want to first clarify one thing, which is that for the purpose of representation in central educational institution or central services, the Central Union of India did not make any move to grant any to ensure a representation of socially and educationally backward classes, either in central educational institutions or central services, until very late into 90s. In fact, in a central educational institution, provision was made only after 2006 and 7, and services it was after 1993, after Mandal Commission. So it was the states who were taking the lead. So states were trying to make some provision whereby socially and educationally backward classes, which means clubbing of caste together, caste groups together, similarly circumstanced or similarly placed caste groups together who had got similar social and educational conditions together as OBC, as the other backward caste, and then make reservation in favor of them so that they could gain access to education. But when such measures were taken up, they were routinely challenged before high courts and Supreme Court, and it is very unfortunate, and this is one of the most disturbing point in the history of Supreme Court, where Supreme Court went on to just strike down most of the attempts made by the state governments to provide representation to socially and educationally backward class. So the first case was M.R. Balaji versus State of Mysore, decided by the Supreme Court in 1963. And in this case, Supreme Court said that the caste of a person cannot be the sole or even predominant criteria or factor to determine whether that he or she belongs to a backward class. So in this case, Supreme Court gave a major blow to any kind of affirmative action which states could take in their territories to provide representation to socially and educationally backward classes, because the whole exercise of identification of socially and educationally backward classes could be done and can reasonably be done only on the basis of identification of caste, socially and educationally backward class, and put them together and create a class. Supreme Court said no, the caste cannot be the sole criteria and not even a predominant criteria, and therefore it struck down attempts by the state of Mysore to provide representation to socially and educationally backward classes. It struck down the criteria itself, the test itself, which was based on the caste and similar other conditions. Supreme Court said that no, we have to go by the poverty, occupation, place of habitation. These are the relevant factors to be taken into account, and not the caste of the candidate or the person. In addition, Supreme Court did one more thing, that in addition to destroying the basis of identification in this judgment, Supreme Court said that we cannot, there cannot be reservation more than 50%. So in a way, the idea of 50% reservation, the ceiling of 50%, was mooted for the first time by the Supreme Court in M.R. Balaji case, something which is extra constitutional, which has got no place in the constitution, but the first movement was made by the Supreme Court to restrict the representation of socially and educationally backward classes in educational institutions and in state services. And this rule, this judgment of Supreme Court in M.R. Balaji was followed by in Devdasan versus Union of India. So it held the field for quite some time. Devdasan was decided in 1981. And these two judgments and similar other judgments also, some judgments were also decided on the basis of the ratio laid down in M.R. Balaji case. And Supreme Court basically viewed equality 15.4 and 16.4 as an exception to the general principle of equality contained under Article 15.1 and 16.1. So Supreme Court in a way only emphasized the concept of formal equality. It demonstrated complete lack of understanding of the idea of substantive equality. That it is only when people who come from lower state of the society, when they brought up a little, that you have a greater equality, and not when you maintain the status quo just as it is. So a few groups, a few sections are up here, and their representation in educational institution, state services, media, Supreme Court, High Court, elsewhere is 50 times more than their population, and then you have huge population which is not represented at all. And when we talk about other backward classes, OBC, if and their estimation of the population, it is more than 50%. So what we are talking about is exclusion of more than 50% of the population from educational spaces and also from state services, which means that this seriously at one level it destroys our ability to tap into the creative potential of this huge majority of people who are working class, laborers, artisans, who have never really been into educational spaces. Their ancestors have never had the opportunity. They never enjoyed much of power, share in power, either in medieval India or in modern India under British rule. So after independent India also, the trend continued as a result of these judgments, and this was really unfortunate for Supreme Court, to say that 15.4 and 16.4 they operate as an exception. 15.1 says no discrimination on the basis of race, religion, caste, sex, etc. 16.1 also similarly says, and therefore 15.4 and 16.4 they are to be treated as an exception. And the Supreme Court did not really read it as part of the principle of equality, that when you bring up and you provide opportunity to socially and educationally backward classes, the net effect is that equality index improves and it does not go down, which means you are creating more of equality rather than less of an equality. So how can it be an exception? It cannot be an exception. So this simple fact, Supreme Court took this simple fact to recognize the validity of this argument. Some 25 years of operation of the Constitution. In 1976, in the state of Kerala versus N.M. Thomas, for the first time Supreme Court recognized that that Article 15.4 and 16.4, they are not an exception to 15.1 and 16.1. And Justice Krishna Iyer in this case held that 16.4 and 15.4, they are rather an emphatic assertion and direction to the state to take affirmative action to enforce the concept of equality laid down in Article 14, 15 and 16. And the moment you come to this idea that 15.4 and 16.4, affirmative action, reservation is not an exception, rather it is an expansion of the idea of equality. Your application of the principle in specific cases changes the outcome completely. Because if it is not an exception, if affirmative action is not an exception, if reservation is not an exception, then you cannot have a ceiling of 50%, number one. Because if affirmative action or reservation which brings more inequality, more of an equality is not an exception, it creates more equality, therefore it is part of the rule, it is part of Article 14, it is part of 15.1, it is part of 16.1. Then you can't say that because it is an exception, therefore it has to be less than 50%. From that point onwards, you have to look at it as a principle of proportionality. So, depending upon the percentage of population, size of a population, you have to look at the affirmative action. So, Supreme Court in N.M. Thomas said this 50% criteria cannot remain, and this limit is unreasonable. And there cannot be any maximum limit. In any case, there was no maximum limit prescribed by any provision of the Constitution. You can't read 50% in any part of the Constitution. And Supreme Court then also went on to hold that caste could be a predominant criteria. Caste has to be permitted as a criteria for identification of social and educational backwardness. And when the state makes a provision for reservation, it does not violate the principle of equality, rather it expands the idea of equality. It goes on to implement the responsibility imposed on it to bring more of equality in society and state. However, very interestingly, this judgment of the Supreme Court also went on to allude to the possibility of a creamy layer, concept of creamy layer, that the better off, the well off within the scheduled caste, scheduled tribes and other backward classes, they should not be allowed to avail the benefit of reservation after a point. I will discuss this concept of creamy layer at length later on. So that became the dominant position. N.M. Thomas really was a break. As Supreme Court, the so-called meritorious Supreme Court, took so many years to understand a simple concept that Indian society, irrespective of regional, linguistic, religious, ethnic diversity, is predominantly constituted on the basis of caste, and destruction of caste or annihilation of caste is possible only when all caste groups gradually come to similar social, educational and economic condition. They enjoy a similar share in power. After all, that is what is democracy all about. I mean, in democracy, unless and until you have different segments of society properly represented in educational spaces, in the structure of the state, in power structures, then you don't really have a democracy. If only you say 15% of the population or 20% of the population is enjoying all the fruits of power, fruits of development, then it is not, you can't really call it a democracy. It is just another aristocracy. So for democracy to really have meaning and content, it is necessary that different segments of the society find representation, and to be able to identify different sections and the segments in which society is divided and classes in which it is divided is the primary task of the social scientist, who will then help us identify that okay, the society is organized around these social markers. It could be gender. In our country, gender is a very important social marker. Class is one of the most dominant social marker, and therefore when you look at the idea of democracy, it has to be in harmony with the principle of representation of these gender identity or caste identity in particularly in educational space. How can anybody object to the idea of representation in educational institution for every section of the society? I mean, every section of the society must have an equal opportunity to study, to develop their mental faculty, to develop their personality, so that every one of us can contribute meaningfully to the social and national development. If vast majority of the country, they are left out, they don't have opportunity to get good education, then we can't really have a strong nation or a strong society which can stand alone, which can stand apart in the community of nations. So therefore N.M. Thomas was a departure, and it was a welcome development. However, idea of creamy layer, rather problematic idea, was mooted, and I will discuss subsequent developments, what happened after N.M. Thomas, how because N.M. Thomas was decided in 1975, what happened after N.M. Thomas, how Supreme Court then went on to build on the reasoning of N.M. Thomas versus State of Kerala, how certain observations on creamy layer came to become the topic of predominant concern for the Supreme Court of India, and how they really went on to destroy another window of opportunity which was open for socially and educationally backward classes. I will discuss all these topics in the next video. I suggest that you go through the topic in your books and focus on your Baer Act. And I will also send you the link of my first video which I had prepared on Article 13, Clause 4. So you watch these two videos and more will come very soon. Thank you very much.